Stop. That $4.2 billion deal is a trap. The boardroom fell into a stunned silence. Dozens of heads turned toward the voice sharp, unrelenting, that had sliced through the air like a blade. There, near the double mahogany doors, stood Maya Williams, a young black woman in a navy blue janitor's uniform, her mop forgotten and her voice shaking not from fear, but urgency. Her eyes locked onto the man at the head of the long glass table, Charles Whitmore, billionaire CEO of Whitmore Enterprises. He had just picked up a Mont Blanc pen to sign a contract that would change his company forever. Maya's voice broke through again, this time louder. "Mr. Whitmore, please, don't sign that agreement. You're being set up. This merger will destroy your company from the inside. They're using you." Lindsay Vance, the firm's legal counsel, blinked in disbelief. Marcus Klein, the CFO, immediately stood and barked, "Security." But Charles held up a hand, eyes narrowed at Maya. "What did you say?" "I said the deal is a trap," Maya repeated, breathless. "I heard everything. They plan to gut the company, terminate thousands of domestic jobs, and hand control over to Technova's offshore shell entities. They'll leave you powerless while they collect their bonuses." The room buzzed with disbelief, whispers, eye rolls, muffled chuckles. Charles's brow furrowed. "And how exactly would you know that?" Maya swallowed. Her voice dropped to something raw and painful. "Because I used to do this work. I was a financial analyst at Archer Morgan Holdings. I read contracts like this in my sleep, until they pinned a fabricated loss on me, made me the fall girl for a missing $3 million. Just because I was young, black, and too good at what I did." The air tightened. Several board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others outright scoffed. "You? An analyst?" one man muttered. Another board member snorted. "What's next? The security guard's a surgeon." Laughter erupted around the table. Lindsay covered her mouth, hiding a smile. Marcus shook his head. "This is beyond absurd. Charles, let's proceed." But Maya didn't back down. "If you feel for the character, give this video a like and comment where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching too." "You can laugh at me all you want," she said, voice rising over the din. "But I heard Marcus and Lindsay talking in conference room B, your so-called partners. They said once you sign, they'll bleed the company dry. I recorded some of it. Not all, but enough to raise questions." "Doubly, you expect us to believe a janitor recorded our CFO planning a hostile asset gutting?" Lindsay scoffed. "Yes," Maya snapped, "because that janitor used to manage portfolio risk for firms bigger than this one." But the laughter had already done its damage. The sting in Maya's eyes betrayed the steel in her voice. Her throat tightened. Not from fear, from humiliation. The same kind that haunted her every day in that uniform. She turned to Charles. "Please, you don't have to believe me. Just don't sign. Delay it. Review it. Look at who you're trusting." Security arrived. 2 guards in dark suits moved toward her. "Ma'am, step outside." "Don't do this, Mr. Whitmore," Maya cried as they gripped her arms. "You're signing your legacy away. You have to believe me." They began dragging her toward the doors. "I worked in rooms just like this one," she shouted over her shoulder. "I know how this game is played. They flatter you, then fold you. You're smarter than them, don't let them win." The doors slammed shut behind her. For a moment, the boardroom was silent again. Charles remained seated, motionless. The contract still lay in front of him, signature line untouched. The Mont Blanc pen in his hand felt heavier than before. His gaze drifted down the page, the wording he had trusted, the names he had signed with for years. "She's bluffing," Marcus said, voice cool and confident. "Classic manipulation." Lindsay added, "We should finalize this. Every minute we waste, Technova's offer weakens." But Charles didn't speak. "Charles," Marcus pressed, "this deal is the best strategic move we've had in years. Trust your team. Let's do what we came here to do." Charles looked up slowly, eyes clouded with something far more complicated than doubt. His voice was quiet, yet firm. "No." Marcus froze. "I'm sorry?" Charles stood. "I'm not signing anything today. I want this contract pulled. We're going to review every clause, every entity involved. We reconvene in 72 hours with a new draft. Gasps rippled through the room. One board member dropped his pen. Lindsay's face drained of color. Marcus opened his mouth to object, but Charles cut him off. If there's even a sliver of truth in what that woman said, even a chance, then this deal is worth pausing. I'd rather delay than regret. Zen. He turned toward the window, the city skyline stretching out like glass under the morning Sunday. She risked everything to say what no one else would, he murmured, mostly to himself. Maybe that kind of courage deserves more than a laugh. And just like that, the meeting ended not with applause, but stunned silence. Far down the hall, in a break room with peeling paint and a flickering vending machine, Maya sat alone, her heart pounding, unsure if she'd just saved a company or signed her own end. But for the first time in years, she had spoken the truth, and someone had listened. Maya Williams sat in the break room, staring blankly at her reflection in the vending machine's glass. The smell of stale coffee, cleaning chemicals, and microwave chili clung to the air. Her heart was still galloping in her chest, but now it wasn't just from what she had done, it was from what she had felt over the past few weeks, and had tried to ignore. Strange things had been happening. At first, it was small. Her shift schedule changed without notice, overnight moves that left her arriving to locked doors or overlapping with coworkers who looked just as confused. Her locker was moved. Her badge glitched twice, denying her access to staff entrances she'd used for years. Then came the anonymous notes on her time card. One labeled her unreliable. Another said disciplinary action pending with no attached report. She'd gone to HR, but they shrugged. Nothing's wrong in the system, they said with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Must be a glitch. Maya had seen this before, not in uniforms, but in tailored blazers. It was a slow squeeze, the kind meant to push someone out quietly without a formal firing. The message was clear. We don't want you here anymore. And yet, she had never spoken a word. Until today. Until she stood in the boardroom and told the truth. Now she was suspended with pay, oddly enough, and waiting in limbo. That evening, long after most of the building had emptied, Charles Whitmore sat alone in his office, the city glowing in orange and blue beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. A file lay open on his desk. Inside was Maya's employment record, printed out by his executive assistant under direct orders. Her photo from her first day stared back at him, no mop in sight. Just sharp eyes, clean lines, and a quiet fire in her expression. He flipped the pages. Name, Maya Elizabeth Williams. Age, 29. Former role, Junior Financial Analyst, Archer Morgan Holdings. Education, NYU Stern, magna cum laude. Termination, 5 years ago, performance issues, loss of company assets, no trial, no internal review, no appeals. But Whitmore had seen this pattern before. A young black analyst rising fast, suddenly accused, silenced. He recognized a white-collar lynching when he saw one. He dug deeper. His team found her present circumstances, living in the south side of Chicago, in a 2-bedroom apartment with her disabled son, Elijah, age 7. The boy had a rare neurological condition requiring round-the-clock care, therapy, and medications. No husband, no support system, just her. Whitmore leaned back in his chair, guilt creeping in like a shadow. For 5 years, she'd been scrubbing the floors of the building he owned, and not once had anyone, including him, bothered to see her. Until today. The next morning, the boardroom was packed again. Only this time, it wasn't Maya being dragged out, it was others. Charles entered the room without his usual smile. His expression was steel. Marcus Klein stood near the screen, confidently tapping a chart until he saw Charles's face. Then he paused. Let's proceed, Lindsay said quickly, adjusting her blazer. We've had some noise this week, but the documents are sound. Sit down, Lindsay, Charles said. She blinked. Excuse me? You, Marcus, and everyone who had a hand in this Technova deal, I want your resignation letters on my desk by 3 p.m. The room fell into chaos. Charles, you can't. Oh, I can, he said sharply. You sold me a dream while planning a heist. You underestimated me, and worse, you underestimated a woman who deserves more respect than all of you combined. No one spoke. Security entered quietly. Marcus threw his folder on the table and stormed out, his face crimson. Lindsay followed. slamming her phone down in the hallway as she cursed under her breath. Charles remained standing. She warned us. She risked everything while the rest of you sat here planning bonuses. This company will not be built on silence or betrayal. Later that day, Maya received a call. Miss Williams, the voice said, Mr. Whitmore would like to see you. Immediately. She expected another round of questioning, maybe even a formal goodbye. But when she stepped into his office, Charles stood from his chair and extended a hand. Welcome back. Maya hesitated. Back? To where you belong. The Zier. He held up a document, a formal offer, signed and stamped. Position, Financial Risk Analyst, Whitmore Enterprises. Salary, Yuzon, Suffer, Year. Remote flexibility, approved. Benefits, full medical for you and your son. She stared, jaw trembling. Is this real? Charles smiled, softer now. You risked your livelihood for the truth. That's the kind of integrity I want shaping this company's future. Tears welled in her eyes. But I'm not just anything, he interrupted gently. You're exactly what this place needs. You didn't lose your position, Maya. They tried to erase you, but they failed. She looked down at the contract, then back at him. I don't know what to say. He walked around the desk and stood beside her. Say yes, then help me rebuild this company into something better. For people like you. For people like Elijah. She smiled through her tears. Yes. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Taxis honked. Skyscrapers shimmered. But for the first time in years, Maya Williams didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's world. She belonged. And this time, they would hear her loud and clear. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 32nd floor. Maya Williams took a deep breath and stepped out, her heels clicking softly against the polished tile. The hallway smelled like fresh wood polish and citrus, not bleach, not the ammonia scent she'd grown used to as a janitor. This time, she wasn't here to clean. She passed a row of glass offices, heads turning as she walked by. Most didn't recognize her. A few did, and froze mid-step. A security guard who once barked at her to watch the mop water gave her a long, confused look. An assistant blinked, then whispered something to a colleague. Maya ignored them. She kept walking. The office at the end of the hall had her name on the door. Maya Williams, Financial Risk Analyst. She opened it. The room was modest, but clean and modern. A wide desk, a dual monitor setup, and a view of Lake Michigan shimmering in the morning sunday. There was even a small pot of sunflowers on the windowsill, her favorite. She didn't know who had left them there. On the desk sat a sleek, black leather binder with her name embossed in gold. Inside, her orientation materials, system logins, key contact list, and a handwritten note. They tried to erase your brilliance. We're here to honor it. CW. She sat down slowly. The chair adjusted to her weight, firm and ergonomic, nothing like the backless plastic stools in the janitor's closet. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, and for a moment, doubt crept in. Could she really do this again? After 5 years out of the game, she clicked open the first file, a preliminary report on internal audit discrepancies in the Technova contract. Half an hour later, she was lost in the numbers. Her mind, sharp and methodical, fell back into rhythm like it had never left. Columns of red flags jumped out at her: inconsistencies in deferred liabilities, hidden transfer payments, and off-balance sheet maneuvers buried behind innocuous terminology. The blueprint of sabotage was still there, only messier now, rushed by Marcus and Lindsay in their haste to close the deal. They had underestimated her once. They wouldn't do it again. Later that day, Charles Whitmore invited her to his private conference room. This time, she didn't hesitate when walking in. She didn't feel like an intruder. She felt like a contributor. Maya, he greeted warmly, offering her coffee. I wanted you to meet someone. The door opened again, and a tall black woman in her 60s entered, elegant, composed, with silver streaks in her short curls and eyes that could read a room in a glance. This is Dr. Claudette Rowe, Charles said, former VP of Regulatory Affairs at Trenton Equity. She's consulting with us on ethics compliance as we rebuild. Claudette smiled. So you're the firecracker that flipped a boardroom upside down. Maya smiled shyly. I guess I'm the broom that swept it clean. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that carried weight, history, and quiet respect. Charles leaned forward. We're creating a special task force. One that doesn't just audit the past but anticipates future manipulation. Maya, I want you on it. With Claudette. Maya's eyes widened. Me? But I just started again. You restarted, Claudette interrupted. That's harder, and you see what others miss. Maya hesitated, but then nodded. I'm in. That evening, Maya returned home to her small apartment on the south side. The neighborhood was quiet. Not in the peaceful way, but in the wary, waiting way. Streetlights flickered. A siren howled 2 blocks away. Inside, her son Elijah lay on the couch, a soft blanket tucked up to his chin. His nurse, Miss Carla, smiled as she gathered her things. He was an angel today, she said. His breathing was steady, and we got through his speech exercises. Maya kissed Elijah's forehead. How's my little lion? He stirred, blinking up at her with sleepy eyes. Mama, I got the job, baby. His lips curled into the faintest smile. No more mop? She chuckled, choking back tears. No more mop. Miss Carla handed her a sealed white envelope. This came while you were gone. Certified mail. Maya opened it and unfolded the paper. Her stomach dropped. It was a letter from Archer Morgan Holdings, the company that had fired her. The letter offered a formal apology and notification that her record had been updated. The fraudulent loss accusation had been overturned. No explanation, no press release. Just a line at the bottom. This matter is now considered closed. Maya stared at the letter, then at Elijah. Not yet, it isn't, she whispered. The next morning, Maya met Claudette in the strategy room. The walls were covered in flowcharts, names, entities, and arrows pointing to financial trails. They were building a map not just of Technova's sabotage attempt, but of a larger network. Claudette pointed at a series of shell company names. They've done this before, across 6 firms in 4 states. Always the same pattern: dangle a merger, strip assets, fire workers, cash out. Maya frowned. And always with different faces leading the charge. Exactly. That's how they survive. They hide in shadows. They use people like Marcus as pawns. Maya circled a name with her pen. Then let's drag them into the light. Claudette smiled. I knew I'd like you. Back on the floor, word of Maya's promotion had spread. Some smiled. Others avoided her. A few whispered when she walked by, but no one laughed anymore. And when she passed the janitor's closet, she stopped, opened the door, and looked inside. The mop was still there. She stepped in, grabbed it, and walked it down to the basement storage. On the way, she passed a new janitor, young, nervous, eyes wide. Maya nodded to him, smiling. Take pride in your work. No matter what at Island. He blinked. Yes, ma'am. No. Later, she returned to her office, slipped into her chair, and opened a blank document. Subject line. Proposed internal ethics, early warning model. As her fingers typed, she thought of Elijah's smile, of Claudette's wisdom, of Charles's decision to listen when others didn't. They had tried to erase her. Now she was writing herself back in line by line, chart by chart, truth by truth. This wasn't just a job. It was the beginning of justice. It was a Tuesday morning when the first real sign of resistance appeared. Maya Williams sat in the conference room, her eyes locked on the spreadsheet displayed on the shared screen. Claudette was mid-sentence, pointing to a suspicious asset movement between 2 dormant subsidiaries. The numbers didn't add up. Funds had shifted days before the Technova merger was scheduled to close, but before the board had officially approved anything. Someone had moved early, illegally. Someone knew the deal would be signed before it even reached the vote, Claudette muttered. That's insider coordination. High level. We need to figure out who leaked it. Maya leaned forward. We cross-referenced the internal login logs with the timestamp. Someone accessed these shell accounts from our network. Charles Whitmore stood quietly at the back of the room, arms folded. He had been more present lately, no longer the distant CEO relying on second-hand reports. Now, he wanted the truth straight from the source. From her, Maya continued. We track the metadata, look at the server access patterns. Whoever it is didn't cover their tracks well enough. But just as she reached for the keyboard, the screen flickered. The spreadsheet vanished. The display cut to black. What the? Claudette frowned. Is the system down? Maya asked. No notice from IT. Charles replied, pulling out his phone. Maya's stomach sank. She tapped her laptop. Nothing. Her files gone, her access revoked. She stood. Someone's trying to shut this down. Within minutes, the IT director, a lanky man with sunken eyes and a nervous twitch, entered the room, holding a tablet. Sorry about the outage, he mumbled. Appears to be a systems update error. Maya walked over. What file triggered the error? He hesitated. Ma'am, I'd have to check with security protocols. Claudette crossed her arms. You're looking at security protocols. Now, the man sighed and held up the tablet. Maya scanned the list. A red highlighted line caught her eye. Williams, user, report, temp flagged, unauthorized access. She looked up sharply. They flagged my report? The man shifted. It was auto-flagged. Someone reported unusual behavior from your account earlier this week. Charles stepped forward. Who? The IT director hesitated, then said, a complaint was submitted anonymously, suggesting Miss Williams may be accessing sensitive files without clearance. Claudette nearly laughed. She's in charge of sensitive files. Maya didn't flinch, but inside, the realization hit her like a cold slap. Someone in the company still wanted her out, quietly, permanently. That afternoon, Maya sat at her desk staring out at Lake Michigan, her reflection in the glass overlaying the waves beyond. The sabotage attempt wasn't over. It had just gone deeper underground. She opened her encrypted notes and began documenting everything: dates, times, anomalies, system lags, odd behavior. A name kept creeping into her mind. Gordon Blake, the company's interim chief strategy officer. He had remained quiet during the Technova fiasco. Too quiet. Never took a public stance, never raised a concern. But Maya had seen him in the hallway one morning, whispering to someone from Archer Morgan, her old company, the one that tried to bury her. It was time to dig. The next day, Maya requested an internal clearance review with HR, citing the sabotage of her project. Officially, it was routine. Unofficially, it was bait. Hours later, she received an email flagged as internal confidential. But the signature line had no name, no title. Just, you don't belong here, stop digging. Her fingers trembled as she deleted it. She knew what this was. The same tactics they'd used 5 years ago: manufactured noise, anonymous reports, shadow warnings. They didn't just want to erase her work. They wanted to erase her again. But this time, she wasn't alone. Claudette called that evening. Still with me? Always, Maya answered. We're narrowing it down. I have a contact inside Archer Morgan willing to talk someone who knew about the false charges against you. Maya froze. Who? Can't say yet, but he's willing to meet. Maya's voice dropped. If he confirms they framed me, we expose them. Claudette was quiet for a beat. Then, and we burn it down. Back in the office the next morning, Charles stopped by Maya's desk, an unusual move that turned several heads. I wanted to check in, he said softly. Maya nodded. I'm holding steady. I spoke with the board. The remnants of it, anyway. Those who didn't walk out after Marcus and Lindsay. There's talk of rebuilding the board with new faces. Ethical ones. Maya smiled faintly. That's a start. He looked around, then leaned in slightly. I owe you more than thanks. You didn't just save my company. You saved me. From blind trust. From arrogance. I'd forgotten how easily power can insulate us from the truth. She met his eyes. Then use your power to protect it. I plan to, he said. Starting now. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. What's this? She asked. Your promotion. Effective immediately. You'll co-lead the Ethics and Risk Task Force, reporting directly to me and Claudette. Title: Director of Strategic Integrity. Her mouth parted. Director? You've earned it. No more shadows, Maya. She took the envelope, fingers tight around its edges. As he left, Claudette stepped beside her and said softly, They're scared. That means we're close. Maya looked around the room, the glass walls, the quiet tension, the shifting glances. Then let's give them something real to fear. And in that moment, she felt the tide turn, not all the way, not yet, but enough to know this. She had stepped into a world that once tried to bury her, and now she was holding the shovel. But she wasn't digging her grave. She was unearthing the truth. It was raining again. The kind of steady, soaking rain that turned the Chicago skyline into a blurred watercolor behind Maya's office window. She sat in near darkness, the overhead lights dimmed, fingers tapping rhythmically against the edge of her desk, as she read and reread the same 3 lines in an email from Claudette. He's ready. Tonight. 9:30, level 3 east parking deck. Na name, na title, na digital trail. Maya leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. For days now, she had traced faint fingerprints through the company's corrupted archives, piecing together a spiderweb of ties between Whitmore's former board and Archer Morgan. The same names kept popping up, shuffled between shell companies, disguised as consultants, buried behind NDAs. And now, someone from that world wanted to talk. She checked her watch. 9:02 p.m. Time to go. The east parking deck was nearly empty when Maya arrived. The rain had chased off most employees earlier in the day. Her tires echoed against the concrete as she eased her car into a far corner, headlights illuminating a solitary figure near a column. He was tall, lean, wearing a navy coat and a baseball cap pulled low. As she stepped out, he didn't move, just stood there with his hands in his pockets like he'd been waiting years instead of minutes. "You Maya?" he asked. His voice was gravelly. "East Coast, maybe Jersey." "I am." "Oh." He looked over his shoulder, scanned the ramp for cameras, then handed her a plain manila folder. "I used to work compliance at Archer Morgan," he said. "Back when you were there, I saw what they did to you." Maya's fingers tightened around the folder. "Then why didn't you speak up back then?" "I was scared. We all were. They made examples out of people who crossed them. One guy found himself audited into bankruptcy 6 months after asking the wrong question. Another? Suicide. Or so they claimed." She swallowed hard. "And now? They're planning something bigger. You think Technova was the end game?" He chuckled bitterly. "That was the test run. They're working on a broader merger play, using shell companies to bleed small firms dry. Whitmore Enterprises was just one step in a chain." Maya opened the folder. Inside were transaction records, company filings, and most chilling of all, a confidential email thread between Lindsay, Marcus, and 2 unnamed Archer Morgan execs. Subject: Phase 2, use Whitmore fallout as cover. Body: once Maya is discredited again, the board will fold. Whitmore will lose control. Will acquire quietly through Greystone Holdings. Delay media involvement. Maya's hands trembled. "They were still watching me," she whispered. "They are watching you," the man said. "I've seen internal memos. Your name's on every threat model. They never thought you'd come back. And now that you have, they're rushing. Sloppy. That's your window." "Why help me now?" Maya asked. He hesitated, then pulled out a photo from his coat, a woman and a young girl, smiling in a sunny backyard. "My daughter's 6. I don't want her to grow up in a world where people like them run everything unchecked. You're the only one who stood up." He turned to leave, but paused. "Be careful who you trust, Maya. They've got more ears in Whitmore than you think." Then he disappeared into the rain. Maya drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the storm. She parked, took the folder, and sat in her car a moment, staring at the apartment building where her son slept, oblivious to the war his mother was waging behind closed doors. She thought of Elijah's tiny hand gripping hers during doctor visits, the way he whispered "Mama" when the seizures made him forget her face for a moment. She thought of the nights she lay awake, praying she could afford another month of therapy. Then she looked at the folder again. They had tried to break her once. They were going to learn she wasn't breakable. The next morning, Maya stormed into Charles Whitmore's office, folder in hand. Claudette was already there, sipping black coffee, her expression unreadable. "Read this," Maya said, dropping the folder on the desk. Charles opened it, his face tightening as he skimmed through the pages. By the time he reached the email thread, his jaw was locked. "This isn't just a conspiracy," he muttered. "It's an operation." Claudette stood. "They want your company, Charles. And they're not finished. You've got 2 choices. Wait for them to make their next move, or go public first." Charles exhaled slowly, then looked at Maya. "What would you do?" Maya didn't hesitate. I'd pull back the curtain, blow it open, use our own channels, our own press. Let the world see them. Charles looked down at the folder again. They'll come for you harder. I know, Maya said, but I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. By the end of the day, a press release was drafted. It wouldn't name names, not yet, but it would announce Whitmore's full internal investigation into recent merger fraud attempts. It would signal strength, not fear. That evening, as Maya walked to her car, a black SUV slowed as it passed her on the street. The windows were tinted. No plates. No sound but the soft hum of the engine. It rolled by, paused for a heartbeat, then drove off. She didn't look back. Inside her apartment, she kissed Elijah goodnight and opened her laptop. New files from Claudette. A deeper dive into Greystone Holdings. More pieces of the puzzle. As the clock struck midnight, Maya was still working, still connecting the dots. They had built an empire on silence, but Maya Williams had found her voice, and she wasn't done speaking. The morning after the press release, Maya arrived at headquarters to find the building buzzing like a shaken beehive. Whispers traveled faster than coffee in the break room. Heads turned as she passed, some curious, some impressed, others quietly hostile. She knew this shift. She had lived it before. Once, as a young analyst fresh from NYU, when her sharp reports had made older executives uneasy, and again now, but this time, the stakes weren't numbers in a spreadsheet. They were power, legacy, exposure. Claudette greeted her at the elevator. "They're rattled," she said, handing Maya a sealed thumb drive. "Our friend in the parking garage sent this overnight. Said it's the missing piece." "What is it?" Maya asked. He said it's what they forgot to erase. They stepped into the secure lab. The lights dimmed automatically as the door sealed behind them. Only 3 people had access to this room: Maya, Claudette, and Charles. Maya inserted the drive into the encrypted terminal. A single folder appeared on screen. Ops. Coral Echo. Claudette raised an eyebrow. That's their code name. Maid. Inside were dated surveillance clips, low-res, grainy footage, but damning in its own right. They clicked through. One video caught their breath. A boardroom. Archer Morgan's upper floor. Lindsay was seated at the head of the table. Marcus beside her. Across from them sat a younger man Maya recognized from internal compliance reports. Gordon Blake Whitmore's current interim chief strategy officer. "They think Whitmore's clean," Gordon said, voice low and cynical. "But the girl, the janitor turned analyst, she's a problem. We bury her again," Lindsay replied, "same way we did before. Get it to fabricate a security breach, float anonymous complaints. Let the internal network destroy her from the inside. Charles is too soft," Marcus added. "He won't survive the PR hit once the audit scandal leaks. By Q4, we'll absorb Whitmore under Greystone's umbrella." They clinked glasses, smug, certain. Claudette leaned back, arms folded, and they recorded themselves. Maya sat frozen. Her blood throbbed in her ears. For 5 years, she had carried the weight of a false accusation. For 5 years, she'd questioned her own memory, her own instincts. Now she had proof. "I want this to go public," Maya said, voice tight. "Not just the internal audit, not just names. This, the whole video. Let them see it. Let the world hear them plan the destruction of people's lives like a chess game." "No." Claudette was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "We'll go to the Attorney General's office. I'll activate my contacts in federal oversight. They'll have no choice but to investigate now." Later that afternoon, Maya and Claudette briefed Charles. He watched the clip without speaking, his face pale, lips pressed into a line. When it ended, he turned slowly to the window. "Gordon was in this building 2 hours ago." Maya stiffened. "He's still here?" Charles nodded. "Called a meeting with junior staff, acting like nothing's happened." Claudette stood. "We can't wait for the feds to make a move. If he suspects we know, he'll start shredding digital footprints." Charles nodded once. "I'll have him escorted out." Discreetly, Maya placed a hand on the desk. "Don't be discreet." He looked at her. "Make it public. Fire him. In writing. With a statement attached. Name the video. Force the media's hand. If we play it quiet, they'll call us cowards or liars. If we go bold, we control the narrative. Charles studied her, then smiled faintly. You're more of a CEO than I am some days. 2 hours later, Gordon Blake was escorted out of Whitmore Enterprises by 2 security officers. Employees paused mid-call, mid-meeting, watching silently as the man who once barked orders was walked past them without a word. Charles's statement was released within the hour. So was a 2-minute clip from the footage. The media took it from there. That night, Maya stood on her apartment balcony, phone buzzing endlessly beside her. Her name was trending number Maya Williams across several platforms. Some headlines read, "Janitor to Justice, the whistleblower who shook the system. Whitmore fires executive after shocking internal video surfaces. Analyst silenced, then vindicated, now leads ethics force." Elijah sat beside her, wrapped in a fleece blanket, looking up at the stars. "Why are people saying your name on the news, Mama?" he asked. Maya smiled gently. "Because sometimes, when you speak the truth loud enough, the whole world finally listens." He nodded. "You're like one of the good guys in the cartoons." "I try to be." The next morning, federal investigators arrived at Archer Morgan's headquarters with sealed warrants. By noon, news broke of multiple resignations. Claudette's contact inside the AG's office confirmed that full-scale fraud investigations were now underway across 5 states. But Maya didn't feel triumphant. She felt steady, grounded. The fight wasn't over, but she was no longer fighting alone. Whitmore Enterprises launched a new initiative that same week, one Maya helped design, the Lighthouse Program, a department-wide anonymous reporting system with legal support for whistleblowers. "No one gets buried again," she said during the launch speech. "Not on our watch." And as applause rippled through the crowd, Maya felt something lift from her shoulders, not just vindication, but renewal. She had returned not just to reclaim her place, but to build something that lasted, something that mattered. And she was just getting started. By the end of the week, Maya Williams had become a quiet legend in the building. Not the kind people shouted about, but the kind they nodded to when she walked by. The kind whispered about in the elevator as if just saying her name could bring integrity back into the room. Yet beneath the surface of headlines and polite nods, a deeper current stirred. Archer Morgan was being dismantled publicly. Charles Whitmore had begun rebuilding the company's ethics board with Maya and Claudette at the helm. But power rarely went quietly, and Maya knew better than to mistake silence for safety. Late Thursday evening, as most employees headed home, Maya stayed late, reviewing a series of vendor audits. Her office window overlooked the loading dock, where a truck idled longer than usual. Something about the timing nagged at her. The vendor ID didn't match the route schedule. It was just a truck, she reminded herself. But instinct whispered otherwise. She grabbed her bag and headed to the elevator, fingers gripping the folder she had just marked, Anomalies. As the doors opened, she stepped in only to find herself standing beside someone she hadn't seen in years. Danielle Royce, her former colleague from Archer Morgan. He had vanished after her scandal broke, never returning her calls, never answering her texts. And now, here he was, standing in Whitmore's elevator like a ghost reinserted into the timeline. Maya stiffened. "Daniel?" He looked up. A flicker of surprise. Then a well-practiced smile. "Maya. Wow. It's been a long time. What are you doing here?" she asked, pulse suddenly alert. "Consulting. Temporary placement through Iron Tech Advisors. They're helping rebuild Whitmore's security framework. Guess I'm part of the cleanup crew." He chuckled. Her eyes narrowed. "You knew what they did to me." Daniel's smile faltered. "It wasn't that simple. You ghosted me, Daniel." He hesitated, then sighed. "I didn't know what to believe back then, and I didn't have the power to stop anything. But I'm here now. If that counts for anything." She said nothing. The elevator chimed at the lobby, but she didn't move. "You're not just visiting, are you?" she asked carefully. He shrugged. "Let's just say some of us know how the game works, and we'd rather fix it from the inside." The doors opened. He stepped out, leaving Maya alone, unsettled. As she exited the building minutes later, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Some ghosts don't stay buried. Watch your 6. A friend." The next morning, Maya met with Claudette in the cafe downstairs. "Daniel Royce just reappeared," Maya said, pushing her coffee aside. He says he's consulting. That doesn't sit right. Claudette's brow furrowed. I thought he fled after Archer Morgan dumped you. So did I. But he's back. And I think he's embedded. Watching. Maybe even sabotaging. Claudette nodded. I'll run a full background check. In the meantime, assume he's listening. Maya leaned closer. Then we turn the tables. Let's feed him a breadcrumb trail, something small. See if it leaks. Claudette smirked. You sure you're not CIA? I'm just a woman who's tired of waiting for justice to show up. Later that day, Maya called a meeting closed door with 3 trusted members of her new team. They discussed vendor anomalies, and Maya intentionally inserted false data into one of the flagged supplier files. A harmless fabrication. If that information showed up anywhere it shouldn't, they'd know someone was watching. Within 48 hours, the false data appeared in a leaked internal memo circulated to Whitmore's logistics team, exactly the kind of manipulation Maya had predicted. She printed the memo, circled the false line, and dropped it on Claudette's desk. Bingo, she said. Claudette nodded grimly. He's leaking. The question is, to whom? That weekend, Maya drove 3 hours south to visit her aunt, not just to breathe, but to think. The farmhouse was quiet, surrounded by apple orchards and the smell of burning wood. Elijah played with the neighbor's dog while Maya sat on the porch, flipping through her notebook. Her aunt, a retired librarian, poured her tea. You've got the same look your mama used to get, she said. Storm eyes. Maya smiled faintly. I feel like I'm fighting an invisible enemy. Every time I push forward, someone tries to yank me back. Her aunt nodded. That's how systems stay standing. They don't fear exposure. They fear people like you. Ones who don't quit. Maya looked out over the fields. It's not just about me anymore. No, her aunt said softly. It's about what you leave behind. Maya exhaled. The weight didn't leave her shoulders, but it settled differently. She realized then, her fight wasn't just for justice. It was to build a future where no one else would be forced to carry this same weight in silence. Monday morning, Maya returned to Whitmore's headquarters with a new sense of clarity. Daniel Royce was a pawn, maybe even a spy, but she would control the board now. She met with Charles and Claudette and proposed a new operation. Operation Clear Mirror, an internal review and whistleblower protection system with embedded traps for false actors. A system to not only clean house but to reveal those still operating in the shadows. Charles agreed without hesitation. We finish this, he said. Maya nodded. No more hiding. She turned back toward her office. As she walked through the glass corridors of the 30th floor, she caught her own reflection steady, unflinching, and not the same woman who once cleaned these floors in silence. This version of Maya Williams walked with purpose, and the walls were finally listening. Maya stood in front of the mirrored glass wall in the Whitmore strategy room, her reflection staring back at her like a silent witness to everything she'd endured. Operation Clear Mirror was no longer an idea. As of 9 a.m., that Monday, it had become official company policy. It was both a symbolic and strategic move. The name whispered transparency, but beneath it lay a complex system of digital tracking, bait files, and internal behavioral analytics, designed to flush out moles. And Maya knew exactly where to start. The first file flagged by the system was a procurement invoice from a supplier that hadn't existed since 2021. It had been digitally resurrected just a few days prior, slipped into the new accounting archive by someone with elevated clearance. Too subtle to notice unless you were looking. But Maya was looking. She ran the access logs. 3 names surfaced, 2 she recognized as junior analysts with clean records. The third, Daniel Royce. She didn't confront him, not yet. Maya had learned that predators often exposed themselves when they thought they were the hunter. She let him think the game was still his. That afternoon, Maya visited the basement records archive, the kind of place few people bothered to check. Dust clung to the air. Metal shelves stood like forgotten sentinels, lined with old binders and paper files from a decade ago. She wasn't looking for numbers. She was looking for handwriting. Specifically, notes from a quarterly review that had once caused her demotion, notes that had mysteriously vanished after the accusations at Archer Morgan. If she could find the physical originals, it would be another nail in the coffin of the people who had tried to destroy her. Halfway down the 3rd row, she found them, tucked in an old finance folder, buried under outdated printouts. Her initials were still on the margins, recommendations she had made now proven right in hindsight. But more importantly, scrawled in red ink, was a comment from a superior she'd trusted at the time. Too good. Might outshine the board. Watch her. Maya stared at the words. It wasn't just professional rivalry. It had been personal. Systemic. Calculated. She took photos, scanned the pages, and slid them into her evidence archive. As she climbed the stairs back to her office, her phone buzzed. Charles. Urgent. Come to the 31st floor. Conference B. No. When Maya arrived, the room was filled with high-level personnel, but the air felt off. Too quiet. Too stiff. Charles was at the head of the table, arms crossed. Claudette stood behind him. Daniel Royce sat in one corner, nervously sipping from a metal water bottle. Miss Williams, Charles began, tone official. We've received a formal complaint. You're being accused of accessing sensitive files without clearance and manipulating internal audits. Maya blinked. I'm sorry, what? Daniel cleared his throat. I noticed some irregularities in the Clear Mirror system logs. Miss Williams accessed dummy files that weren't authorized for analyst review. Maya stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on Daniel. That's because I planted those dummy files myself. As part of the operation, which you were never cleared to know about. Gasps echoed. Claudette stepped forward, dropping a printed audit log on the table. We traced the digital fingerprint, she said. The data leak came from Daniel's terminal. The timestamp matches when he was in the break room yesterday. The system recorded an auto log from his badge entry. And the files? They were accessed by someone using a cloned administrator key. Daniel's face drained of color. Maya kept her gaze on him. You tried to flip the trap, Daniel, but you were already inside it. Charles stood. Mr. Royce, your contract is hereby terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and federal authorities have already been notified. 2 guards entered the room as Daniel stammered, then silently stood and left. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence lingered. Then Charles turned to Maya. Thank you, he said simply. You built something that saved this company again, and revealed just how deep this infection still runs. Maya nodded slowly, her pulse steady. Claudette approached her in the hallway afterward. You good? Maya exhaled. Not good, but clear. They walked together back toward the elevators. What now? Claudette asked. Now we go deeper, Maya said. Archer Morgan may be falling apart, but their shadow still stretches further than we see. Daniel was a scout. There are others. They've embedded into the systems of smaller firms, universities, non-profits. It's not just about money anymore, it's control. Data. Influence. Claudette paused. You're suggesting a coordinated campaign? Maya looked at her. I'm suggesting we're at the center of it. That night, back home, Maya tucked Elijah into bed. The little boy was sleepy, but alert enough to look up at her and whisper, Did you win again, Mama? She smiled gently, brushing his curls from his forehead. I didn't win. I survived another round. He blinked. Will there be more rounds? Maya kissed his cheek. Maybe, but now I know how to fight them. After he fell asleep, she sat at her desk, laptop glowing in the dark. She began drafting a report, one that would go to the Department of Justice and 2 federal agencies. Not about Archer Morgan. Not anymore. This was about Clear Frame Systems, a quiet tech firm based out of Denver with recent investments from a familiar Greystone Holdings subsidiary, the same name she'd seen attached to files Daniel had tried to bury. She uploaded the files, encrypted the folder, and titled it, Next Domino. Herr Finger hovered over send. Then she pressed it. The truth wasn't a single strike. It was a chain reaction, and Maya Williams had just pushed the next piece. By the following morning, Maya had already received an encrypted reply from the Department of Justice. The message was brief but urgent. Requesting in. Person briefing. Denver. Tuesday. We will handle security. Do not share this communication. She reread the message 3 times, then leaned back in her chair. Something about this felt different, heavier. She had expected resistance, delay, at best, quiet interest. But this was swift. Too swift. Claudette entered Maya's office a few minutes later, coffee in hand. Saw your light was on early. What's going on? Maya slid the laptop around. Claudette read the message and let out a low whistle. Well, that escalated quickly. Zell, they're not even asking for supporting evidence, Maya said. They already know about Clear Frame. They just needed someone to break the silence first. Claudette Saturday. You think it's already under investigation? I think it's worse than that, Maya said. I think they've lost control of the investigation, and they need someone outside the usual channels to bring it back. The flight to Denver was quiet. Charles had arranged for a private jet not out of luxury, but for security. He trusted few people now, and Maya was at the top of the short list. As they landed, Claudette, who had insisted on accompanying Maya, pointed out the cluster of unmarked black SUVs idling on the tarmac. That's not just federal interest, she muttered. That's federal fear. They were met by a stern-looking agent in a Navy suit. Miss Williams? Miss Foster? I'm Agent Penn. Follow me, please. No. They were ushered into one of the vehicles and driven in silence through the city, then west into the foothills. An hour later, the SUV pulled up in front of an anonymous gray building with no signage and tinted windows. Inside, they passed through 3 layers of security before reaching a conference room where 4 agents, 2 from DOJ, 1 from the Federal Trade Commission, and 1 from the Department of Energy were waiting. Maya felt the shift immediately. This wasn't a typical whistleblower meeting. This was something else. Agent Penn shut the door. And Saturday, let's be direct, he said. Clear Frame Systems isn't a tech company. It's a front. It was originally funded by a shell corporation tied to Greystone Holdings, but since then, it's received funding from multiple quiet capital streams, money without traceable origin. What they're building isn't public, but we believe it's related to predictive behavioral modeling and AI manipulation at a national infrastructure level. Maya blinked. You're saying they're developing systems to influence public behavior? Penn nodded. Voting patterns, consumer behavior, sentiment control on digital platforms, and yes, even regulatory influence through data-fabricated public opinion. Claudette leaned forward. And no one stopped them? Everyone tried, said the FTC rep, but the money runs through so many layers of legality that by the time you catch up, it's gone. We needed a catalyst. Someone who didn't operate within those circles. Someone who could see it from the outside. Maya frowned. Why me? Because you exposed them once, Penn replied. You've proven you don't just see the cracks, you know how to widen them. There was silence. Then Maya opened her bag and pulled out a second flash drive, one she hadn't even told Claudette about. I found this in a vendor audit, she said. It was disguised as a firmware patch, embedded in an invoice for data storage equipment. But the signature code? It's the same as what we found in the Archer Morgan shell files, and it pings back to Clear Frame servers. She slid the drive across the table. Penn picked it up carefully. This could be what we need. Maya looked around the table. If I go further down this path, I'm not just exposing another fraud ring. I'll be unraveling something that's already coiled around the system. That's exactly why we need you, the FTC rep said. And why we're offering you full legal immunity, access to our forensic cyber unit, and clearance to pursue internal threads under temporary federal authority. Claudette let out a low whistle. That's not a small offer. Maya stared at the flash drive, then at the men and women around the table. I don't want a badge, she said. I want a firewall. My son, my team, I want them off limits. No surveillance, no subpoenas. You get my help, but I don't let anyone else pay for it. Penn nodded. Done. That night, Maya sat in a hotel room high above downtown Denver. Elijah was staying with Claudette's sister for the week, blissfully unaware that his mother had just agreed to help dismantle a digital empire built on deception. Maya opened her laptop, laid out the files again. Notes, IP traces, vendor leaks, names, meetings, a web that spanned cities and industries. She clicked on a folder labeled Influence Model V3. 2. It opened to reveal a dashboard, one designed to simulate public reaction to policy announcements, protests, economic changes, even news events, all weighted and indexed. Real-time simulations on how to spin, stall, or stir public emotion. It was more than propaganda. It was emotional programming, and someone had already deployed parts of it. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, A knock on the door pulled her back. She opened it cautiously only to find Charles Whitmore standing there, coat in hand. "You didn't think I'd let you walk into this alone, did you?" he said. Maya smiled, tired but grateful. "I thought you had a company to run." Charles stepped inside. "This is running the company. If this system becomes reality, there won't be companies or countries. Just control." They sat together, side by side, facing the digital ghost of a world rewritten through code. Maya stared at the screen, then whispered, "This was never just about saving a job. Or clearing my name." "No," Charles said. "It's about saving the truth itself." Outside, Denver glittered in the darkness, but inside, Maya knew the real war was just beginning. The air inside Whitmore Industries had shifted again, not with fear this time but vigilance. Ever since Maya's Denver trip, a silent alarm had rung through the upper tiers of leadership. Those who doubted her before were now watching her closely, not as a threat, but as the only compass they had left in a storm no one could fully see. Maya had returned with fire in her eyes and a blueprint in her hand. Operation Clear Mirror was no longer an internal review initiative. It had evolved into Project Sentinel, a full-blown security counterstrike powered by federal insight and local intelligence, and she was at the helm. On Monday morning, the first part of the plan was executed quietly. All internal badges with elevated access were deactivated, then reissued only after re-verification with biometrics. Anyone who hesitated to comply was flagged. By noon, 4 key employees had resigned unexpectedly. By 3 p.m., Maya received a visitor's log from Claudette, an internal pattern showing badge pings late at night from users who, according to HR, were on vacation. One name stood out: Elliot Granger, Director of Supply Chain Logistics, a man who, just last week, praised Maya in the hallway for her courage. And now, his badge had been used at 2:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning to access a dormant server in Sublevel 3, long thought decommissioned. Maya brought the printout to Charles. "We have a ghost with a keycard," she said. Charles stared at the name. "Granger's been with this company for 15 years. He sat at my table, ate with my family." Maya's face didn't change. "That's how these systems survive, Charles. They dress like neighbors." He nodded slowly, then sighed. "Bring in Claudette. Let's do this clean." An hour later, Elliot was sitting across from Maya and Claudette in a secure glass-walled meeting room. He was calm, too calm. "I assume this is about the server?" he said, folding his hands neatly. Claudette kept her tone even. "You accessed a level we haven't touched since the 2020 restructuring." "It was a maintenance check," Elliot replied. "Standard procedure. I have the email chain to support it." "We checked," Maya said. "No such maintenance request exists, and that terminal isn't connected to any live operation." Elliot blinked slowly. "Then perhaps your IT logs are out of date." Maya leaned in. "You're lying, and the system you accessed it had traces of the same behavioral modeling architecture we found linked to ClearFrame." Silence. Elliot didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. "You're good," he said softly. "Too good. That's what makes you dangerous." "Is that a threat?" Claudette asked. "No," Elliot said, standing up slowly. "It's an observation. But let me offer you something before you waste your time dragging me through a procedural circus." Maya narrowed her eyes. "We're listening." "You're not going to stop it," he said. "You may have cracked the shell, but the engine is deeper. And it's global. What's being tested here is already being refined elsewhere in Singapore, in Berlin, in Johannesburg. You're playing triage. This isn't a company war anymore. It's an infrastructure rewrite." Maya stood. Her voice didn't rise. "And yet, you're still here," she said, "wearing a badge, sitting in a chair you didn't earn. That tells me your engine still fears exposure. That's why you're sweating." For the first time, Elliot's smile faded. Security entered the room. He raised his hands and walked out quietly, but as he passed Maya, he whispered, "You'll see. The world doesn't belong to those who shout. It belongs to those who edit the silence." Later that evening, Maya stood in the hallway outside the server vault. She had ordered the entire system be dismantled and its contents turned over to federal cyber units. But one copy would remain. Not for exposure, but for understanding. She needed to learn the system, not just break it, because she suspected this wasn't the only place it had taken root. Charles joined her, arms crossed. We've frozen every account tied to Granger, he said. Found offshore links to something called Grey Current Holdings, based out of the Cayman Islands. Maya noted. Shell firm, no website, no employees, but the funds move fast. Claudette entered behind them. I found something in Granger's private network. A folder titled Echo Chamber. Dozens of documents. It looks like predictive templates. Not just for behavior. For dissent. Maya turned sharply. Templates. Pre-written responses. Synthetic video drafts. Automated hashtag campaigns. All built to mimic organic online outrage, but controlled. Steered. Designed to short-circuit real protest. No. Maya sat down slowly on the server bench. It's not just manipulation, she said. It's a weapon, a way to preempt truth before it breathes. Claudette handed over a printed file. Read this. Maya scanned the first page. Operation Silent Flood. Phase 3. Objective. Normalize. Controlled outrage to reduce public reaction to corruption. Deployment regions. Midwest U.S., Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe. She closed the folder. They're running it already, she said. Charles spoke quietly. What do we do? Maya stood. We build a new firewall. Not just in tech, but in trust. In media. In schools. We expose the templates. We train people to see the ghost before it speaks. Claudette smiled. A digital literacy revolution? Exactly, Maya said. Not against tech. Against control. Outside, the building was quiet. But inside, something powerful was shifting. Maya walked toward the elevator. Her reflection once again caught in the mirrored wall. This time she didn't just see herself. She saw the shadow of a movement behind her. And it was finally waking up. 2 days after Elliot Granger's removal, Maya received a package with no return address. It had been hand-delivered to the front desk at Whitmore HQ. Just before dawn. The receptionist said a man in a navy jacket left it and walked away without a word. Security footage showed no identifiable face, just a figure with perfect posture and silent steps. Maya opened the envelope in her office, Claudette watching from the door. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed. No heading. No signature. You're not saving the company. You're putting your son in danger. Below it, a grainy black and white photo of Elijah leaving school, alone, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking up at something or someone off frame. Maya's blood froze. Claudette's voice dropped. We lock everything down. Right now. No. Within an hour, Elijah was pulled from school under a private escort. Charles arranged for a secure apartment in a monitored building under an alias. Maya's mother flew in from Atlanta to stay with him. Claudette embedded a GPS tracker in his shoes and backpack, and 2 off-duty officers were placed on rotating shifts outside the apartment. But the message had done its job. This wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal, and Maya understood the true cost of what she was trying to expose. That night, she stared out the window of her office. The city glittering in foggy silence. The world outside looked untouched. Untouched by algorithms, by secret networks, by corrupted loyalties. But she knew better now. Charles stepped in quietly, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He's safe, he said. For now, Maya replied, taking 1 mug. But they're slipping. That message means they're feeling pressure. Charles nodded. And scared people make mistakes. Maya turned. So let's help them make a few more. The next morning, Maya took her team to a small, nondescript co-working space 3 blocks from headquarters. A war room was set up under a new name, Project Reverberate. Its goal was simple: trace the reach of Echo Chamber and Silent Flood into public institutions. The hardest part? These systems didn't hack, they influenced. They didn't steal, they reshaped narratives. They made people believe lies before the truth could find a voice. Claudette created simulations of how their templates would interact with trending news, police shootings, government corruption, environmental disasters. The results were chilling. In every scenario, the system could flood social media with noise within 7 minutes of a trigger event. Within 48 hours, public opinion would be split, discredited, or exhausted. By day 3, few people would remember the truth. It's not just propaganda, Claudette said. It's erosion. Erosion of what? One analyst asked. Memory, Maya replied. And memory is the root of justice. The team fell silent. 3 days later, a breakthrough arrived. A freelance journalist named Tobias Kent emailed Maya's secure inbox. He had been tracking suspicious online activity linked to Clearframe for over a year but couldn't get a major outlet to publish his findings. Every time I get close, my funding disappears, Tobias wrote. My editors backpedal. But I'm not done. And I think we're chasing the same ghost. They met in a coffee shop near the university district. Tobias was in his early 50s, with eyes that had seen too much, and a backpack that rattled with thumb drives and notes. I have what you're missing, he said. You have the system. I have its architect. Maya's brow furrowed. What do you mean? He pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Inside were photos, old employment records, published papers on behavioral modeling. One name repeated through all of it. Dr. Lenora Voss. She had once been a promising AI ethicist. Then, without warning, she'd vanished from academia 5 years ago. According to Tobias, she now lived off-grid, no bank accounts, no public profiles, but he had traced a string of shell companies that pointed to one consistent advisor, Voss. She didn't build the code to control people, Tobias said. She built it to protect vulnerable populations, predict suicide risks, support mental health outreach. But someone took it. Weaponized it. That's when she disappeared. Maya sat back. Where is she now? Last seen near Bodega Bay, California. I've got a lead on a cabin. Remote. Off-grid. Maya nodded slowly. We find her. She built the framework. She can help us dismantle it. Tobias smiled grimly. I was hoping you'd say that. Back at headquarters, Charles reviewed the evidence with Maya and Claudette. This woman might be the only one who truly understands how this system thinks, he said. She's more than that, Maya replied. She's the moral anchor, the proof that it didn't have to be evil, that it was twisted by those who needed control. They agreed to send a small, secure team to Bodega Bay. Claudette would coordinate from New York. Charles would act as liaison with federal partners, and Maya, once again, would walk into the heart of the unknown. Before she left, she visited Elijah. He sat on the floor, building a spaceship out of Legos. When he looked up and saw her, his face lit up. Mama! Maya knelt and held him tight. I have to go for a few days, she whispered. But you're safe, and I'll be back soon. Promise? He asked, eyes wide. I promise, she said, and this time, I'm going to make sure no one ever scares us again. As she stepped into the car waiting outside, Maya knew this next chapter wouldn't just expose systems. It would confront their origin, and with it, the soul of the truth itself. The drive north along California's Highway 1 was as breathtaking as it was nerve-wracking. Towering cliffs plunged into the Pacific, waves crashing below like a chorus of warnings. Maya sat in the back of the black SUV, eyes scanning the coast, hands folded tightly on her lap. Tobias sat beside her, silent except for the occasional check of his weathered notebook. In the front seat, a trusted Whitmore security driver, Rick, navigated the narrow curves with a steady calm. The final stretch was rough, unpaved roads through a forest thick with fog and redwoods. Finally, they reached a narrow driveway barely visible behind a wall of ferns. A rusted mailbox, the nameplate long faded, stood sentinel like a forgotten monument. This is it, Tobias said. The cabin was modest, wood-shingled, low to the ground, built for seclusion. Smoke curled from a chimney, thin and hesitant. Like the home itself wasn't sure whether to welcome strangers. Maya stepped out and took a breath. The ocean was faint in the distance, masked by wind and trees. As they approached the door, she noticed a small camera embedded in the eaves. She looked straight into it. Dr. Voss, Maya said aloud, voice clear. My name is Maya Williams. I know what happened to your work. I think you deserve to know, too. Silence. Then a faint click. The door opened slowly, creaking inward like a sigh. Inside, it was warmer than expected. A wood stove glowed in the corner. Shelves were stacked with books, papers, technical journals. Maps covered the walls, some geographic, others systems architecture. In the center of the room, seated in a simple wooden chair, was a woman with silver-threaded hair, dark eyes, and a face marked by both brilliance and sorrow. "You brought the journalist," she said, voice rasped with disuse. Tobias stepped forward. "Dr. Voss." She raised a hand. "I know who you are. I've read your threads. Too noisy. But your heart's in the right place." Then she turned to Maya. I don't know, but you feel like consequence." Maya nodded, slowly stepping closer. "We've found traces of your system only. It's been manipulated. Deployed for control, not care. People are suffering. Societies are cracking." Voss stood. She was taller than expected, with a quiet strength. "I warned them," she said. "When I left the university, I said the code needed constraints, human oversight. They ignored me. Then, they bought my silence." Maya frowned. "Bought?" "They offered me a retreat, funded, secluded, safe, but monitored. I accepted, thinking I could disappear. But they still used my work, stripped the ethical core and left the bones." Maya pulled out her tablet. She showed Voss the data from the silent flood templates, the influence graphs, the predict and divide strategies. Voss took the tablet, her fingers tracing the code as if greeting old ghosts. This is the shadow fork," she whispered. "I knew they'd copied my base framework, but I didn't realize they'd built iterations so sophisticated. They've layered social triggers into every sequence. We need your help to dismantle it," Maya said. "From the inside, reconstruct what's been altered." Voss looked up, a storm behind her eyes. "If I help you, they'll know I broke the silence." "They already know," Maya said. "They threatened my son. They're not hiding anymore." Voss turned away, pacing. "Then you'll need to go deeper than code. You'll need to dismantle trust pathways. These systems don't just push information, they mimic belief. They create resonance with what people already fear." Maya's breath caught. "You mean it's not about creating opinions, it's about reinforcing trauma?" "Exactly," Voss said. "The system identifies your historical pain, your demographic, your community, and feeds it back to you. Sharper, louder, until it becomes armor, which turns into division," Tobias muttered, "and silence." Voss nodded. "The worst kind of manipulation is the one that feels like truth." For hours, they worked in that cabin. Voss sketched architecture maps, pointed out flaws in the influence triggers, and created a new diagnostic tool, something she called Echo Trace, capable of identifying digital campaigns that mimicked human outrage. As dusk fell, Maya stepped outside for air. The wind off the cliffs was sharp, carrying the scent of salt and pine. She stood there, watching the horizon, thinking of Elijah, of Claudette, of Charles. Then her phone buzzed. "Claudette, we've been breached." Maya's heart skipped. Claudette continued. 3 internal terminals accessed unauthorized databases. The breach originated from within HQ. Someone left a back door open. Maya turned back toward the cabin, her voice urgent. "Lenora, we have to go. They've found us. Or they're about to." Voss nodded. "I have everything we need backed up, but we can't bring it on a network. It has to be air-gapped." She handed Maya a silver case. Inside was a single solid-state drive, no markings. "This is Echo Trace," she said, "and a model to reverse, train their influence bots." Maya took it gently. "How long do we have?" "Maybe hours," Voss said. "Maybe less." Tobias was already loading his gear into the SUV. They left the cabin as the first shadows fell across the forest. Behind them, the house stood still and silent, but Maya knew what it held in the past was nothing compared to what they carried now. Because Echo Trace wasn't just code. It was a compass, and they were about to follow it into the dark heart of everything that had been hiding in plain sight. By the time Maya returned to New York, the air inside Whitmore HQ felt different, heavier. As though something unseen had already made its move. Claudette met her at the underground parking entrance, urgency etched into her face. "They knew," Claudette said without preamble. "Not just about the trip. About Lenora Voss. The moment we pinged a satellite connection near Bodega Bay, 3 shell accounts started siphoning company metadata." Maya gripped the Echo Trace drive tighter in her coat pocket. "Damage?" Claudette shook her head. "Minimal, thanks to our isolation protocols. But Charles. He's not picking up his phone. Last ping from him was at 3:41 a.m., leaving his apartment on foot. No escort. No. Maya didn't flinch, but her chest tightened. Charles never broke protocol. Never. I want all digital corridors rerouted through our clean nodes, Maya ordered. And bring in Rick. I want eyes on every board member's movement for the last 48 hours. As they ascended to the executive floor, the elevator felt colder than usual. Maya looked up at the mirrored panel above the buttons and caught her own reflection, tired, focused, unbroken. The boardroom was full when they entered. Every member of Whitmore's Board of Trustees was present, along with a few unfamiliar faces, lawyers, perhaps, or newly embedded consultants. Most turned to glance at Maya. Some nodded, others didn't. At the head of the table sat Gerald Madsen, acting chairman, a man with a smile as thin as a blade. Miss Williams, Madsen said smoothly, welcome back. We've heard curious things. Do Elv. Maya walked straight to the opposite end of the table and placed the silver case on the wood with a quiet thud. You're going to hear more. Madsen arched a brow. Before we begin, I must inform you that Charles Everett has officially tendered his resignation, effective immediately. Maya blinked. He cited burnout, Madsen said, his voice thick with false sympathy, and a desire to retreat from public scrutiny. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the recessed lights. Maya's jaw clenched. Charles didn't write that statement. Well, Madsen said, folding his hands, perhaps you can ask him yourself if he chooses to resurface. Claudette stepped forward and slid a folder onto the table. Chairman Madsen, she said coolly, we've traced multiple unauthorized data transfers from your executive assistant's terminal. These began the morning after Maya's initial investigation into Silent Flood. Madsen chuckled. You're accusing me of espionage? On my own company? No, Maya said, sliding the silver case forward. We're accusing you of treason against the public trust. She clicked the latch and opened the case. Inside was the Echo Trace drive, plugged into a secured offline laptop. With a few keystrokes, Maya brought up a live demo of influence loop simulations, showing how specific keywords and emotional triggers were fed into digital channels to shape public opinion. A video played, a whistleblower speaking out, followed by bot armies flooding comment sections. The metadata revealed coordinated origins bots disguised as real users, stoking fake controversy until the public turned on the whistleblower. Your people under shell firms used this system not just to protect profits, Maya said, but to destabilize real oversight. You turned anger into a product. A woman at the far end of the table gasped. Another board member looked away. Madsen didn't flinch. You think this is about feelings? He said coldly. It's business. You cannot control billions of dollars with clean hands. We didn't build the fire. We simply learned how to fan it. Maya leaned forward. You used Lenora Voss's technology intended for mental health intervention to manipulate fear. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Madsen stood. And what are you going to do, Miss Williams? Publish a report? Leak files to a journalist? You'll be discredited within a week, just like all the others. That's where you're wrong, Claudette said, stepping to Maya's side. Because this time, we're not alone. The door opened. Tobias Kent walked in, followed by a tall, suited figure, Agent Caroline Vega from the Department of Digital Integrity. Vega held up a federal warrant. Gerald Madsen, you are under investigation for willful participation in unauthorized psychological operations and illegal data manipulation targeting American citizens. Madsen's face finally shifted not into fear, but calculation. This won't stick, he muttered. The board will circle the wagons. The media will drown it out. They always do. Not this time, Maya said quietly. Because this time, the silence is broken. No. Security entered, and Madsen was escorted out, still whispering denials under his breath. The boardroom remained still. Vega turned to the remaining members. We'll need cooperation moving forward. Any further obstruction will be treated as complicity. After the room cleared, Maya sat alone at the table. She pulled out her phone and checked for any word from Charles. Still nothing. Claudette joined her, holding 2 mugs of strong coffee. One battle down, Claudette said. But the war's still long, Maya replied. Tobias stepped in. Lenora called. She's found a hidden sublayer in the influence framework. A sleeper protocol, designed to reactivate dormant networks on a time delay. It's buried deep. How long do we have? Maya asked. She's not sure, but it's timed to an upcoming public event. Maya's eyes narrowed. Then we need to act before it does. She looked around the room, once a place of deception, now turned into the front line of something bigger. Whitmore wasn't just a company anymore. It was ground zero for a reckoning, and Maya, standing at its center, knew the final layers of truth were yet to surface. At exactly 6:45 a.m., the city skyline blinked through the misted windows of Maya's temporary command center, a floor below the main offices at Whitmore HQ. The early sunlight didn't bring comfort, only clarity. The team had just uncovered the most dangerous piece of the puzzle yet, the sleeper protocol. Claudette stood at a massive whiteboard filled with diagrams and arrows drawn in red. At the center, a countdown timer based on the subroutine Lenora had decoded. It was set to trigger in 4 days on the morning of the National Civic Data Summit, an annual event attended by government officials, nonprofit leaders, and tech giants. Everything points to a coordinated activation during the summit, Claudette said, gesturing to a map of virtual traffic patterns. They've hidden behavioral triggers across thousands of user profiles. When the signal goes live, we're looking at a digital wildfire. A manufactured crisis, Tobias added, flipping through his notes. They'll let the system mimic real-time reactions to a staged event. Protests. Civil outrage. Division will escalate fast, and if the summit collapses under public pressure, policy changes get delayed, investigations stall, and Whitmore's remaining culprits walk free. Maya rubbed her temples. It's not just about chaos. It's about buying time to erase their tracks. The question now wasn't if they could stop the protocol. It was how. By noon, Maya and her team had relocated to a secure satellite office, away from the eyes of lingering board members and compromised staff. Lenora Voss joined via encrypted video from an undisclosed location, her face bathed in cold blue light. The protocol uses decentralized nodes, Lenora explained. It won't activate from one server. Think of it as lighting 1,000 tiny fuses across the internet all at once. Kill a few, and the others still ignite. So we need a simultaneous global block, Claudette said. Lenora nodded. We either create a neutralizing algorithm that intercepts each trigger or, Maya asked. Or we use the system against itself, Lenora replied. Feed it synthetic empathy. Force it into a recursive loop that dampens instead of divides. Tobias whistled. You're talking about hijacking the machine's language. Exactly, Lenora said. We don't fight fire with fire. We fight it with meaning. For the next 2 days, Maya barely slept. Code was written, tested, broken, rewritten. Every simulation they ran showed promise and peril. The synthetic empathy model, dubbed the Mirror Protocol, could halt the sleeper activation, but it would also expose the identities of those behind the manipulation if not perfectly timed. We'll need one final test, Claudette said, and a clean launch point. Maya glanced up. Where? The Civic Data Summit, Claudette said. We deploy it live, on site, where they least expect it. The morning of the summit arrived gray and heavy, like the air knew something the people didn't. Held at the Liberty Convention Center, the event buzzed with anticipation. News crews gathered outside. Protesters, planted or real, lined the sidewalks. Inside, politicians mingled with CEOs, and everyone acted as though their conversations weren't being watched, recorded, or manipulated. Maya wore a dark blazer, her ID badge reading Consultant, Whitmore Group. Claudette, Tobias, and 2 cyber specialists from Lenora's team had badges that matched. They moved through security quickly, carrying small cases of equipment and a single, unmarked drive, the Mirror Protocol. Inside the convention floor, the buzz of tech presentations echoed. Maya walked past a sleek screen displaying phrases like future-proofing democracy and harnessing AI for equity. Irony. Thick as smoke. By 10 a.m., the keynote was minutes away. The protocol had to be deployed during the opening data sync, when every attendee's badge registered their presence and personal data was momentarily centralized. Maya crouched behind a vendor booth, plugging the drive into a hidden access port tied to the building's master signal router. Claudette stood beside her, reading real-time feed metrics. "Trigger windows are aligning," Claudette said. "They're about to light the fuse." Maya took a breath. "Then so do we." She hit deploy. "No." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the screens around the summit flickered, subtle, barely noticeable to the average eye. But in the command center's secure feed, they saw it. The mirror protocol was active. It piggybacked the sleeper wave. Instead of letting the divisive triggers bloom, it reflected them, altering content, replacing outrage with reconciliation, redirecting attention to truth-based sources. A fabricated protest call online was redirected to a voter registration initiative. A planned smear article, auto-deleted and redirected to a real-time transparency report. In less than 3 minutes, the protocol had neutralized over 82% of the planned activation pathways. But then, Claudette cursed. "Backlash detected. They've launched a counterspike." Maya looked at the feed. Someone from inside the summit, someone physically present, was trying to reroute the broadcast. A black hat maneuver, designed to trigger the original chaos sequence. Tobias scanned the crowd. "There," he pointed, "a man in a staff uniform, carrying a maintenance tablet, slipping behind a security panel near the AV stage." Maya ran. Pushing past crowds, she reached the panel just as the man entered a code. Without hesitation, she grabbed his shoulder, spinning him around. It was Charles, disheveled, pale, eyes hollow. "Charles," she gasped, but his expression didn't soften. He shook his head slowly. "I didn't have a choice," he whispered. "They took my niece. I thought I could mislead them, but they always knew." Maya stared in disbelief as his finger hovered over the tablet. "I'm sorry, Maya." And then, he pressed cancel. The counterspike died instantly. Around them, the summit screens returned to normal. The air shifted, lighter. Security rushed in, detaining Charles gently as Maya stepped back, heart racing. Later, as the mirror protocol's success was confirmed across global networks, Maya sat alone in the summit's rooftop lounge. The sky was clearer now, the cityscape humming with the unknowable peace of what didn't happen. Claudette joined her with 2 coffees. "Official word is the protocol will be reviewed by Congress. Whitmore's board is being dissolved, and several arrests are already underway." Maya sipped the coffee. "And Charles?" she asked. "He's in protective custody, testifying. He might get his niece back." Maya nodded slowly, eyes distant. The war wasn't over, but for the first time, the silence was no longer winning. And from the ashes of manipulation, something else had begun to rise. Truth. The aftermath of the summit spread like ripples from a stone dropped into still water. For once, those ripples carried not panic, but a powerful reckoning. In just 48 hours, major news networks shifted their tone. Headlines read not of scandal, but exposure. Mass manipulation unveiled. Inside the AI web of influence. Digital empathy saves the day. And most notably, janitor turned hero. Maya Williams and the collapse of the sleeper protocol. Maya hated the word hero. She hadn't done it alone. Claudette, Tobias, Lenora, even Charles, broken and frightened, had chosen the right thing at the last second. Still, her name was the one that stuck. And with that came a flood of interview requests, media attention, and offers from tech companies, political think tanks, and even Hollywood producers. She turned them all down. There was still too much left unfinished. Inside the now disbanded Whitmore HQ, Maya stood in what used to be the executive boardroom. Empty chairs surrounded the long glass table like ghosts. She moved slowly, her eyes pausing on the seat that once belonged to Charles. Then to Madsen's, now stripped of its placard, the leather worn from years of arrogance. Claudette entered quietly behind her, holding a new file. "The Justice Department just released the first round of indictments," she said. 5 former board members, 2 external contractors, and, she hesitated, 1 senator. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" "Greer, Arizona." Maya exhaled through her nose. "Figures. He pushed anti-whistleblower laws last year." "That," Claudette handed over the file. "But there's more." Lenora found a second layer under the mirror protocol, a fail, Deadman switch. It was buried deep. If someone had tried to reverse engineer it, the system would have unleashed an even more volatile version of Silent Flood. But you disarmed it when you paused the update loop at the summit. You bought us time. Again, Maya didn't respond right away. She walked over to the window. Looking down at the bustling street below, life had returned to the city. People walked, talked, argued, laughed, unprogrammed. I keep thinking about the janitor closet, Maya said softly. Claudette looked puzzled. What about it? That day. The beginning. When I first overheard the board talking about the contract. I wasn't even supposed to be near the top floors. But my cart broke. I went to get a spare mop head. And fate, or maybe something bigger. Claudette stepped beside her. You trusted your instincts. You spoke up. You didn't let them make you small. I had no choice, Maya said. I was already invisible. What did I have to lose? Claudette nodded slowly. And everything to gain. Later that afternoon, Maya visited the hospital. Elijah, her son, was sitting up for the first time in days, coloring a spaceship with the intense focus only an 8-year-old could manage. When Maya entered, his face lit up. Mom! She rushed over, wrapping him in a hug, careful of the IV line taped to his arm. You're getting stronger, she whispered. They said maybe I can come home next week. Elijah beamed. Did you stop the bad people? Maya smiled, brushing a curl from his forehead. We stopped some. There will always be more. But every time someone tells the truth, it gets harder for them to hide. Like superheroes? He asked. She chuckled. Not quite. More like janitors. We clean up messes people pretend they don't see. That evening, a small press conference was held in the shadow of Whitmore's corporate tower. Maya stood at the podium not for attention, but for clarity. I won't speak long, she began, looking out at the rows of reporters and citizens, some holding signs of thanks, others just curious. I'm not a politician. I'm not an executive. I'm a mother. A former analyst. A black woman who mopped floors in the same building where they tried to destroy the truth. The crowd hushed. I was silenced once, not just with words, but with assumption, that because of how I looked, or where I worked, I didn't belong at the table. I wasn't smart enough, strong enough, real enough. They were wrong. She paused, letting the silence breathe. The technology that nearly tore us apart was built by people who thought profit mattered more than people. But the system doesn't win unless we let it. Silence is a choice. Complacency is a choice. So is courage. She looked down at her notes, then folded them and set them aside. This wasn't my story alone. It was a mirror held up to all of us, and now we decide what we do with the reflection. Applause erupted raw, unfiltered. It wasn't manufactured. It wasn't amplified by code. It was real. The next morning, Maya sat across from Tobias and Claudette at a small cafe in Brooklyn. The air smelled of fresh bagels and wet leaves. So, Claudette said, stirring her coffee, what's next? Tobias leaned back. I've had 3 offers to turn this into a podcast, or a book, or both. I'm going back to the clinic, Claudette added. Quiet work, but important. Maya smiled at them, grateful. I'm taking some time. Elijah needs me. And maybe I need me, too. Tobias raised his mug. To truth. Claudette clinked hers. To stubborn women with mop buckets. Maya lifted hers last. To every voice that refused to be erased. They drank. Outside, the city moved forward. The war wasn't over, but truth had cracked the surface, and from that fracture, light began to pour through. 3 weeks had passed since the summit, but for Maya Williams, time hadn't softened anything. If anything, the silence that came afterward was louder than the chaos that preceded it. She stood in the ruins of what used to be a vibrant community center in Bed-Stuy, now boarded up, graffiti tagged, forgotten. Her fingers traced the edge of a charred mural on the back wall, a child holding a torch made of stars. She remembered painting it with Elijah one summer before his diagnosis. Back then, she thought hope was just a feeling. Now she knew it was a plan. Miss Williams? The voice came from behind her. A young woman in city maintenance gear stepped forward, holding a clipboard. I was told to meet you here. You're the new project lead? Maya turned, nodding. That's right, Maya Williams. We're not just rebuilding this center. We're redesigning it from foundation to philosophy. The woman smiled. I read about you. You used to be a janitor, right? Maya chuckled. Still am, but now I'm mopping up policy failure. Back at her apartment, Elijah was doing homework at the kitchen table. His cheeks were fuller. His laughter had returned. Every improvement felt like a miracle sewn together with grit, medicine, and whispered prayers. Tobias was at the window, reading a printed dossier. You got another one, he said, tossing the folder onto the counter. Another offer. This time from a major foundation in D.C. They want you to join their ethics in AI initiative. Maya raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, big title, bigger bureaucracy, and endless meetings about meetings. Pretty much, Tobias replied. But they'd give you a serious budget. You could build something real. She flipped the folder open, skimming. Her eyes paused on one page, a proposal to fund digital literacy programs in marginalized communities. She didn't say anything, just folded the page and tucked it in her jacket. I'm not saying no, she murmured. I'm just saying not yet. That night, as city lights flickered to life, Maya sat alone at her small writing desk. She pulled out a yellowed folder from the back of the drawer, her old employee file from Whitmore. Coffee stains, creased corners, the word terminated stamped in red across the top. Below it was a note she'd never thrown away. You're not a fit here. Maybe try something more appropriate. She had cried the night she received it. Now, she just smiled. She took out a blank piece of paper, wrote a new letter in the same format but with a different title. Reinstatement of purpose. To whom it may concern. I am no longer asking for permission to matter. She slid it into a new folder, labeled it Future Plans, closed the drawer. 2 days later, Maya found herself on a stage again. Not for press, not for praise. This time, it was a community tech expo in Harlem, hosted by a coalition of neighborhood educators and technologists. Behind her were teens, single moms, and retired veterans, ordinary people who had shown up not because they believed in systems, but because they believed in each other. Maya adjusted the mic. When we talk about influence, we often mean social media, political spin, data harvesting. But influence starts smaller than that. It starts with what you choose to care about when no one's watching. She scanned the crowd. I used to think being invisible was a curse. Now I know it's a power. They don't see you coming when they've decided you don't count. People murmured their agreement. Some clapped. A woman in the front row wiped a tear. We're building something here, Maya said. Not just firewalls and code. We're building a culture of protection, of digital citizenship, of truth. Because if they can use tech to divide us, we can use it to protect each other. Afterward, as people mingled, a teenage boy approached. Miss Williams, he asked nervously, do you think someone like me could be a systems analyst? I mean, I don't have college yet, but I build stuff. I've made apps and mods. And, well, I'm not like official. Maya looked at him and saw a reflection of who she'd once been, overlooked, undervalued, brilliant. You're already official, she said, handing him a card. Come to the next workshop. Bring your code. Bring your ideas. Just don't ever let them convince you that your worth is up for debate. He beamed like someone had just handed him a key. Back at home that night, Maya sat on the couch as Elijah leaned against her, watching cartoons. The volume was low, the mood peaceful. Her phone buzzed. A message from Claudette. Found something. Not urgent, but strange. Call me when you can. Maya frowned, replying, You're too smart to label something not urgent. Spill it. A few seconds later, another ping. The AI models we neutralized. Some are re-emerging. Not the same structure, but similar patterns. Whisper networks on fringe forums. A new name keeps popping up. Horizon Core. Maya sat upright. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Tired yet? Claudette texted next. Maya smiled to herself. Never. Later, she stood at the window again, watching the city live. It would always be imperfect, always messy. But it was theirs, and as long as people like her kept fighting, kept watching, kept teaching, it would never belong to the shadows again. The darkness had tried to erase her. Now, she was designing the light, and she wasn't done yet. The name echoed in Maya's thoughts all night. Horizon Core. It sounded corporate. Clean. Intentional. But under the polished facade, it reeked of something she'd seen before: covert architecture, buried code, the manipulation of influence through invisible threads. At dawn, she called Claudette. Tell me everything. Claudette didn't waste time. It's not public yet, just whispers, encrypted chats on the dark web, chatter from tech forums where whistleblowers hide behind avatars. It's a shell company created 3 months ago, shortly after the summit, and it's pulling in developers from companies we flagged during the Silent Flood investigation. Is it connected to Whitmore? Maya asked. Not directly, but the pattern is familiar. Same usage of AI sentiment scraping, same hiring of data behaviorists. But this time, Claudette's voice tightened. They're framing it as wellness technology, digital emotional support bots, grief simulators, AI therapists for low-income communities. Maya sat at her desk, her jaw tightening. Let me guess. The AI listens, learns, then redirects emotions. Gently, subtly. And sells the emotional data to clients, Claudette added. All under the guise of care. Maya's stomach turned. Their engineering consent. Exactly. By mid-morning, Maya had set up a private roundtable with Tobias, Claudette, Lenora, still in hiding, and a new voice, Carmen Alvarez, a former ethics director at a Fortune 100 firm who had quietly resigned after blowing the whistle on algorithmic manipulation. I reviewed Horizon Core's open-source language models, Carmen began, pulling up files on her tablet. It's not just passive listening. The bots are trained to identify vulnerability markers, loss, poverty, loneliness, and then nudge users toward brands, ideologies, or emotional dependencies. They're monetizing pain, Tobias muttered. And steering belief, Carmen finished. Maya leaned forward. We need proof. Concrete. Undeniable. Lenora's voice crackled through the speaker. We can intercept a live demo. There's one tomorrow night in Chicago. A closed event for investors and mental health innovation leaders. I already found a backdoor into their beta server. Claudette added, I can get us credentials. Maya nodded. We go. Quietly. No press. No confrontation. We watch. Record. And if they're doing what we think they're doing, we expose it, Tobias said. No, Maya corrected gently. We dismantle it. This time, at the root. The venue was a boutique hotel in downtown Chicago. Marble lobby, scented air, smiles that didn't reach the eyes. Maya arrived wearing a sleek black blazer and ID badge that read Dr. Marion West, Behavioral Integration Consultant. Inside the event space, a stage displayed a soft-lit logo, Horizon Core, the future of emotional AI. The audience was polished startup founders, tech philanthropists, VC investors. Most sipped champagne and spoke of ethics, the way one might speak of weather, abstract, and safe. A presenter took the stage, young and enthusiastic, with a voice trained for TED Talks. Imagine a world where no one grieves alone, he said, where technology becomes your confidant, your counselor, your mirror. He tapped a screen. Meet Emmy, your companion through loss. The screen lit up with a soothing interface, a genderless avatar with calm eyes and a soft voice. A live demonstration began. A woman from the audience volunteered. She sat, put on a headset, and began interacting with Emmy. She spoke of losing her husband 2 years ago. Her loneliness. Her doubts. Emmy listened, nodded, responded with tailored comfort, then gently shifted the conversation. Have you considered visiting the new Unity Retreat in Arizona? Many like you have found healing there. Maya's eyes narrowed. Claudette whispered beside her. The retreat is owned by a subsidiary of Horizon's parent company. I checked. Lenora's voice came through the earpiece. Confirmed. Data packets are being transmitted in real time to Horizon's central cloud. Emotional tracking, response sentiment, purchase behavior prediction. Tobias added, "This isn't therapy. It's emotional targeting. They're turning healing into a sales funnel." Maya felt a slow fury rise in her chest. Then something unexpected happened. The woman on stage began to cry not from sadness, but from feeling exposed, raw, controlled. "I didn't agree to that," she whispered. The room went tense. The presenter tried to laugh it off. "It's a beta, just a taste of what's possible." "No." But whispers spread. People began checking their phones. Some recognized their own data had been used past online grief searches, private chat patterns, voice prints from unrelated apps. The air changed. And then, Maya stood. She didn't plan to. She didn't need to say much. But she had to. "I'm Maya Williams," she said clearly, removing her badge. 3 months ago, I helped stop an AI-based manipulation campaign. Today, I see it's evolved, not smarter, just subtler. Lo, eyes turned toward her. They call it care. I call it coercion through comfort. It's not innovation, it's intimacy, weaponized. The room was silent. Then Carmen stood. Tobias followed. Claudette, too. Maya turned toward the presenter. "Shut it down. Before we shut it down for you." The woman who had volunteered removed the headset and walked off stage straight toward Maya. She didn't speak. She just took Maya's hand and squeezed it tightly. The spell had broken. Hours later, outside in the cold air of Chicago, the team stood on the sidewalk beneath a flickering street lamp. Police had not been called, but the media had. Footage from inside had leaked. Social platforms were ablaze. Horizon Core's stock plummeted by morning. Maya looked at the others, exhausted, empowered. "Are we done?" Tobias asked. Maya shook her head. "No, but they're exposed. Again. And this time, they're not hiding in data, they're hiding in plain sight. That's a weakness." Claudette smiled. "What do we do next?" Maya turned, eyes fierce. "We build better. Tools that protect instead of manipulate. And we teach people to spot the difference." Carmen laughed softly. "You're dangerous, Maya." "No," Maya replied, voice firm. "I'm awake." And the war for the soul of empathy had just begun. The morning after the Horizon Core exposure, Maya stood in front of a small group of teenagers at the community center, the one rebuilt on ashes, now humming with life. On the wall behind her hung a mural. Elijah had helped paint a phoenix rising, its wings filled with constellations, its heart glowing gold. Maya wasn't wearing a suit, no podium, no cameras, just jeans, a t-shirt that read, "Data is power, know yours," and a quiet resolve. "Truth isn't just something we chase," she said, her voice steady. "It's something we build. Every choice, every question, every line of code, every time you refuse to look away, you're laying down the bricks." "Lie." The kids stared at her, most of them holding tablets or phones, their faces lit with curiosity, not distraction. One raised her hand. "But how do you know if something's trying to manipulate you?" Maya smiled. "That's the right question. And the first answer is ask who benefits. Who gets richer, more powerful, or more invisible when you don't question something." She stepped forward, more teacher than fighter now. "What they count on is silence. What we counter with is awareness." Now, later that afternoon, Maya sat in her office, sorting through a pile of grant proposals for grassroots digital literacy programs. Tobias leaned in the doorway, holding a steaming cup of her favorite cinnamon tea. "Your speech from last night's expo hit 1 million views," he said. "You're trending again." "I don't want a trend," Maya replied without looking up. "I want impact. Quiet, stubborn impact." "You're getting both," he chuckled, placing the cup beside her. "Lenora called. She's coming back stateside. Wants to meet in person. Says there's movement on a federal bill, something to hold emotional AI to real accountability standards." Maya looked up. "Is it real, or just another distraction bill with soft teeth?" "She thinks it's the start of something better. With your name attached to it, maybe it'll actually bite." Maya sighed, not from weariness, but from the weight of possible. That evening, She tucked Elijah into bed. He was healthier now, still fragile, but gaining strength every day. He had started drawing again. Not just spaceships this time, but people, community, scenes of protest and rebuilding. His crayons became a form of storytelling, his way of reclaiming what sickness had tried to take. "Mom?" he asked, pulling the blanket close. "Will the bad people come back?" "They always try," Maya said softly. "But we're ready now. And when you grow up, you'll be even more ready." He smiled, a little sleepily. "Can I help you someday?" "You already are," she whispered, brushing his hair. He was asleep before she stood up. Across the city, a group of lawmakers reviewed evidence packages compiled by Maya's team, Lenora's archives, Carmen's analysis, and whistleblowers they'd given safe space to come forward. The weight of these files didn't just rest in paper and digital logs, it rested in a new kind of accountability. One senator paused, reading Maya's testimony. "She was a janitor," he said, almost in awe, "and now she's rewriting the rules." Another replied, "Maybe we've had the wrong gatekeepers all along." Weeks passed. The bill moved forward, slowly, but undeniably. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't stop every version of manipulation, but it named it, regulated it, protected the vulnerable. A foundation was forming. Maya turned her attention toward what mattered most, building a platform that trained communities to defend themselves not just with tech skills, but with critical thinking, emotional resilience, and solidarity. She launched a national initiative, Lightlines, a program to teach media literacy and digital ethics in underserved schools. It grew faster than expected. Volunteers, donors, educators. Everywhere she went, someone pulled her aside. "You're the reason I spoke up. Because of you, I pulled my grandmother off that grief app. You helped me understand my worth." She never got used to it, but she honored it. In the final months of the year, Maya sat alone one evening in the empty main hall of the community center. The lights were dim. Rain whispered against the windows. In her lap, a letter she had never opened, her old termination letter from Whitmore. She opened it now. Read the cold words, the dismissiveness, the cruelty wrapped in corporate politeness. Then she took a pen and wrote across it in thick, red ink, "Thank you. You freed me." She folded it, slid it into a drawer marked "Done," and closed it forever. Outside, she heard laughter. Claudette, Carmen, Tobias, and several kids from the Lightlines cohort gathering for a late-night planning session. She stepped into the hallway, and Carmen looked up. "You okay?" "Yeah," Maya said. "Just grateful." "No." Tobias handed her a cup of hot chocolate. "To what's next?" Maya raised her cup. "To staying awake." As the group clinked cups, the light above them flickered, not in warning, but like a soft pulse, alive, present. Later that night, Maya took a long walk through the city, not in hiding, not with headphones, just her breath, the rhythm of her steps, and the sound of a city, learning to listen again. She passed by an alley where someone was painting a new mural, young hands, old hands, all reaching toward a central flame. She stopped, smiled. The artist looked up. "You like it?" "I love it," Maya replied. "What's it mean to you?" She thought for a moment. "It means," she said slowly, "that even in the darkest systems, someone always holds the match." She walked on, and the flame kept burning. At its heart, this story teaches us that true power doesn't come from titles, wealth, or polished suits. It comes from courage, integrity, and the refusal to be silenced. Maya Williams, once dismissed and overlooked because of her background and the color of her skin, became the voice that exposed hidden dangers and protected countless lives. Her journey reminds us that justice often begins with one person daring to speak up, even when no one is listening. It also reminds us that empathy is not a product to be sold or manipulated. It is a sacred human connection that must be protected. In a world increasingly driven by algorithms and profit, we must never forget to ask, who benefits from our silence? And more importantly, who suffers when we look away? This story is a tribute to the quiet heroes, those who sweep the floors and still carry wisdom, those who are underestimated but never broken. It's a call to remain awake, aware, and committed to building a world where dignity, truth, and justice are not privileges, but rights for all.